The story of Nefertiri Traitor. Let's talk about it. This story takes place in my hometown, so it's a very near and dear story to me. Even though I don't know Nefi personally, I happen to know the story very well. See, I remember when this story first came out. It was back in 2014 when I first heard about this, when I was still raising some of my older children when they were younger. And it was actually quite a difficult time here in the state of Delaware where this case takes place. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. I do remember where Nefertiri lived at the time because she lived in a neighborhood called Saddlebrook, which is out in Newcastle, Delaware. A very nice neighborhood, actually. It's quite decent. Not much going on out there. It's not as decent as it used to be, though. It's a little more run down now, but it's not a bad neighborhood. But at the time when she was staying there, it actually was a very decent neighborhood. I used to bring my daughter to a house that was very close to Nefertiri's home. And so I remember, taking my daughter there and how the neighborhood was and, the temperature of the area. Very decent area, not somewhere where you would expect a crime like this to take place. So let's get into who Nefertiri was. Nefertiri Renice Trader, known to her friends and family as Nefi, was a vivacious, beautiful, loving, and kind young woman. She was known again to her friends and family as a wonderful person who left memorable impressions on everyone that she touched. She was described as someone that everyone gravitated to. She was completely the light of our family, which was stated by her cousin Corey during a press conference. Her life growing up. She was born as to Denise Trader on February 21st in Delaware, coincidentally born to her mother on her mother's actual birthday. So, this was her mother's very first child. Nefertiri was absolutely the light of Denise's life. Now, Denise beamed at her baby girl and vowed to protect and nurture and stand up for her, which, no matter what would happen to her daughter, she would always be there and promised to do that. And Denise actually continues to do that to this day. We'll get into that in a little bit. She lived there with her three children in Newcastle, Delaware, in the neighborhood called Freedom Trail, Saddlebrook. Well, which again, like I said, was in a very decent area. And, at the time it was even more decent than it is now. It's become like a little bit more rundown. It's not rundown, but it's a little bit less nice than it used to be or less crisp than it used to be, then possibly because the homes are a little bit more dated now. Now, this neighborhood sits about 15 minutes or so outside of the city of Wilmington. And, there's actually pretty decent schools in Newcastle and in that area. And, everything that she needed was actually pretty close by. The mall is around there. Also, you have the farmer's market up the road. There's a few things that made the area pretty convenient. So it's a pretty good area to live in. Nefertiri was actually doing pretty well for herself. She had a good job, decent job. She was very admirable to many. She spent a lot of time with her family, teaching many people how to actually make bracelets. That was a hobby her mother continues to remember her by, which is something her mother talked about. So let's talk a little bit about the day that Nefertiri went missing. On June 30th, 2014, this is when this happened on Freedom Trail in Newcastle, Delaware. Now, Nefertiri was very close to her mother, Denise, as I said a little bit earlier. They spoke just about every day. And so when Denise didn't hear from Nefertiri, she knew something wasn't right. It just was definitely amiss. Denise decided to go to the home and check up on Nefertiri around 6 p.m. as her phone calls and text messages just continued to go unanswered. Now, when Denise went to her house, she knew something without a shadow of a doubt was definitely not right because on the porch was a pack of cigarettes, an untouched coffee cup, and a condom. There were also some cigarette butts evidence that she or, someone else may have been smoking. Now, the condom was untouched as well. Now, Denise continued to find evidence that would further confuse investigators and her family for 7 whole years up to this day. There's some other things we'll get into as far as what was, looking a little bit out of place. So some of those things were a loaf of bread seen out in front of the lawn that appeared to be trampled upon. Also, her flip-flops were just perfectly placed near the front door on the porch. And the scene looked as if Neffy had not even planned to leave, and may have even left in a hurry. Now, Denise immediately called the police to report that her daughter was missing. And she would later find out that her daughter was abducted 17 whole hours after the report was initially made. Neffy was only 33 years old, guys. Let's talk a little bit more. Now, this is the part that actually got to me in the situation, and I want to know what you guys think in the comments, okay? A neighbor of Nefertiri was named by the name of Joe Robinson, reported that he had actually heard some commotion outside around 4 a.m. on June 30th, 2014. He claimed that he awakened by what sounded like screaming to see outside of his second-story window that Nefertiri's porch light was on and, illuminating her front lawn. Now, just to give you guys a little side note on that, I thought about what he had said, because he claimed that, he had heard what sounded like somebody was screaming. He wasn't sure what he heard, but he said it sounded like somebody was yelling, to the point that it made him get out of bed and finally go and, investigate what the issue was. As a side note, I would like to say that, when you're sleeping and your alarm is going off, for instance, or your TV is still on and it's a little bit too loud, sometimes for me, that might not register right away that, I'm, hearing an alarm going off, or that my phone is going off or something like that. It might take a few seconds for my brain to kick in and say, hey, I need you to get up and turn off this alarm, or I need you to get up and turn this TV off or turn it down, or whatever the case may be. So it's possible that that would have happened to him. Now, he says that he did look out their window, he looked out his window and he saw an unidentified man, okay? He was able to describe what the man was wearing. He said he was wearing tan shorts and a dark hoodie, and he forcefully shoved Nefertiri into her own vehicle, which is a 2000 silver Acura with Delaware license plates reading 404893. Robinson, however, did not call the police. Robinson also later told police that he thought Nefertiri was sick and that the man was taking her to the hospital, and was completely unsure of what was happening. Robinson also states that he does go downstairs, eventually to see what's going on, but the car sped away. Now, keep in mind, guys, like I said a little bit earlier in the story the area where Saddlebrook sits is in an area where it would be very unusual for a car to be speeding out of that neighborhood that time of the night. Also, there's quite a bit of police activity in the area. They will always, some police are always patrolling the area, whether it's county police or Newcastle police themselves. But there's always police somewhere in the area. So in my mind, I'm thinking, if, a car is seen speeding out of Freedom Trail that time of the night, eventually there would be a cop or somebody that would notice this, because it just would not it would completely look out of place in that area. So I just wanted to throw that in as a side note. Now, he said he did that, and he said he just saw the car sped away. But he also reported he reportedly wanted to notify police, but because he only witnessed a brief moment of the encounter, he claimed he did not want, to just get involved in it, just not really knowing if it was something serious or not. It was 4 a.m., and you don't think it would happen to you or that you would witness something like this. You actually do never know what you would do in a situation. I kind of, can understand that. But, there was quite a bit of rumors, guys, about this. I know that there are people that are my subscribers that do live in Delaware, and they also have heard about this story. I can tell you that there has been speculation throughout Delaware about Robinson's involvement in her disappearance, but the same thing has not been echoed by detectives. Okay. Now, he actually did an interview with the news media. I've been trying to find that interview. So as soon as I do, I'm going to do another story on that, just so you guys can get an update on that and how his behavior was during this interview. Because according to sources, um, the interview was quite bizarre. He was fiddling, he was fidgeting, he was smiling, laughing, and just doing weird things in this interview that would cause quite a bit of alarm. Yet, I'm very aware of how the Newcastle County Police handle situations like this, especially with Black women. So I just wanted to put that out there, and we'll go into that, in another video. Now, the children, let's get back to the story. Her children were asleep in the house, unaware of what was going on. They did get up and got dressed and went to school, just a few hours later, also believing that their mother had gone to work because it wasn't unusual that she would already be at work or have left for work by the time they go to school in the morning. Now, again, the police were not notified until about 16 hours had gone between the time Neffy was, 16 to 17 hours between the time that Neffy was abducted and the time that the police were called. Now, again, this could have saved her life, or it could have at least given us some clues or some evidence as to what happened, because it would have been completely unusual, again, to see a car speed off on Freedom Trail in that area, just speeding, because the highway is not really that far from there. So you can actually just drive regularly to the highway and be out of there and nobody would notice. I could see that happening, um, in either direction. It could have been north or south. And I don't, I don't see why there wouldn't have been somebody notified of somebody speeding out of that neighborhood. Now, so again, I feel like that could have saved her life or at least gave us some clues to what was going on. And since then, guys, her cell phone has not been able to be traced. No records of calls or text messages, aside from friends and family who have said, and stated that they can, that they've called her a text, or anything that the phone company was able to uncover either. There was also has not been any movement in any of her bank accounts and nothing indicating her location. Now, I know that since 2014, Google Maps and different things like that has improved a lot more. GPS has improved a lot more. So phone technology has also improved a lot more now. So if things like this were to happen now, we might be able to pick up some things a little bit easier than we would have done in 2014, even though that wasn't that long ago. But technology does change and increase over the years. So it's possible that we didn't have as much at the time that would have been, at our fingertips to be able to use to locate her. Now, sadly, the Nefertiri's case really did receive very little media attention as time passed. Okay, it was apparent that investigators were at a standstill and with little to no tips coming in about the incident or potential persons of interest. I remember it being a very short period of time that the News Journal here in Delaware actually featured the case. And they did that for a little bit. And then about a year later, they talked about it again. And then about 3 years later, they talked about it again. And we'll get into that in a minute. They also talked about it on 6 ABC News and all the news outlets in Philadelphia, NBC, ABC, CBS. And then they also talked about this on Dateline. Dateline is about as far as it went, as far as media attention. Okay, it really didn't get much further than that. The FBI claimed to have gotten involved. but we know how that goes, guys. So we're not going to get into that either. And pretty much 3 months into the investigation, detectives admitted that they absolutely had no leads in this situation. They just don't know, and they don't have they claim to not have a solid foundation of information about her abduction. They could see no reason why someone would target Nefi either. There wasn't anything unusual going on. She didn't seem to have any, unusual activity happening or anything like that. So nobody really knew what was going on. Now, it's possible that, that could have been a situation that was going on that everybody didn't know. I know of a case, I'll just give you an example. I know of a case of a girl named Elegant McGriff. Rest in peace to her. Unfortunately, she died in a situation where she was involved in some criminal activity that people were not aware of. And it turned out that and she was killed in the situation. So after that happened is when things kind of came out about what type of an activity that she was actually involved in. Pretty sad. But yeah, rest in peace to her. But anyway, going back to Nefertiri, it's possible that she could have been involved with something that we just do not know about, guys, and never will. But who knows? We're going to go ahead and keep looking for her, though. Now, in February of 2015, about 8 months after her disappearance, the Newcastle County Police Department did offer a $10,000 reward in hopes that someone would come forward with information that would lead to locating Nefertiri. That offer is still up to this day. I know they're still offering that 10,000, and the FBI has actually ordered an additional $20,000 on that. So there is a $30,000 reward if you can come forward with information about Nefertiri or what has happened to her. Okay. Now, her mother, Denise, also continued to speak with Nefertiri's friends and take extensive notes, just trying her best to piece together her daughter's life and just answer questions and figure things out. She spent hours driving around from, checking different grocery stores where people actually were reporting seeing someone resembling Nefertiri, countless sleepless nights. It's just really sad what the mother has and the family has experienced over these past 7 years with the situation. After 3 years, though, of aimless searching, looking and searching, the Newcastle County Police Department did, in fact, declare Nefertiri Trader dead. Okay. Her mother is now the caregiver of her 3 children, and she also still maintains that and believes that her daughter is alive, but she has no answers. Very sad, very sad. Now, there's some speculation of what could have happened, okay? And let's get into that real quick. Now, Nefertiri had just returned, actually home, the night of this fateful night from a quick trip to a nearby 7-Eleven. That 7-Eleven is right there on that at the top of that neighborhood, and it was located right up there at the top. And assuming that this is where she actually bought the cigarettes from that were found on the porch, the 7-Eleven footage actually shows her alone around 3:30 a.m. buying 2 cups of coffee. The condom on the porch and the second cup of untouched coffee may have been a vital clue that she, in fact, invited a companion over and potentially knew her abductor. Okay. Now, if she did invite someone over, this person has never been identified. Okay. And there is very, very little information about the case. Pretty much, we only have what this neighbor, Joe Robinson, has seen. Okay. And that's what I find quite intriguing. I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Now, let's talk about human trafficking here in Delaware, because that is also an issue. And that is something that we need to talk about and put out here, because it is possible that this could have been a situation as well. Now, human trafficking has been a problem in Delaware. It hasn't always been a huge problem, but a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic, as a matter of fact, it actually was on an increase. There were children, especially in the city of Wilmington, that were running home and saying that there was a van chasing them, and it was like all kinds of stuff happening. It was all over the city, all over different parts of Delaware. And so everybody was on high alert. The police were on high alert. Everybody just kind of kept their kids safe, kept their kids home. You know, they walked with the kids. Somebody was always with them because this was really a problem. And then the pandemic happened and everything just kind of slowed down, you know, I guess because people weren't really outside like that. But this was an issue. And then, like I said, it had increased for a period. So this is possible that this did happen. However, I want you to keep in mind that generally when there's a kidnapping of that sort, there's usually they usually come with their own vehicle. They don't come and steal your vehicle to take your child or, you know, or something like that. They usually have a vehicle with them already. There's usually somebody working with them. Somebody hops out, grabs the person, the other person drives, that kind of thing. Okay, so in a case like that, I don't think that this was the case. I'm just speculating, but I really don't think that this could have been the case if this was a human trafficking situation. It doesn't seem like this person would go and take her in her vehicle. It seemed like they would want to get in, get out real quick and not leave any type of evidence. So I think that this would be, you know, not necessarily the case. Now, it could be also an unknown lover. Okay. You know, people just don't know. You know, sometimes us women, we like these bad boys sometimes, you know, we get involved with men who are living on the edge or who are doing a little bit too much, you know? And like I said, she could have been involved with something, you know, that was illegal or something that was over the top or shouldn't have been happening. And now, you know, here we are. This is a situation again. But what about her phone records? I mean, you know, like I said, there was nobody that had contacted her, you know, earlier that day or that night, other than, you know, the normal people that she usually talks to, according to the phone records. So it doesn't make sense that it would be somebody who was you know, somebody that nobody knows about or some unknown phone number is popping up or anything like that. You know, and no one has stepped forward to say, you know, that they had any unordinary conversations with her that day. Could have been just a random act of violence, huh? It could have been. But I don't think it was. And again, like I said, you have to know the neighborhood of Saddlebrook, that it goes around in like almost a U shape. Um, and so in order for you to go into the neighborhood, you go out this way, and then there's one way out. It's one way in, one way out. So you're not gonna, it would be really difficult for somebody to come in that neighborhood just to randomly do something at 4 a.m. That would not be the neighborhood to do that. If you're going to do that, it would be somewhere with open row homes or something of that nature where you can just kind of ride up the street and do something real quick. This is not a neighborhood you would even notice is there unless you actually know the area. Okay. And, you know, it could have been also that she was involved in something unknown to her family, like we were saying. Okay. Now, what we do know that she would have been about 41 years old today. We also know that her vehicle was never recovered. Her cell phone was never recovered. She is presumed dead. She is a Black female. She stands about 5'6", weighs about 124 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. She has tattoos on her right chest, left arm, lower back. And she was last seen wearing a pink sweatsuit. She was last seen being forced into, according to Joe Robinson, her silver 2000 Acura CL with a Delaware license plate of 404893. And if you or anyone you know have any knowledge of this situation, of anything concerning her disappearance, please, you are encouraged to reach out to Delaware Crime Stoppers at 1-800-TIP-333. That's 1-800-TIP 3333, or you can reach out to the Newcastle County Police at their website at nccpd.com. Thank you for tuning in.